Graham Westwood, at 38, was a tech mogul whose name graced Forbes covers and whose decisions swayed global markets. His empire, built on innovative software solutions, had made him a billionaire, but the weight of wealth felt hollow. 3 years ago, his wife Caroline succumbed to a rare cancer, leaving him to raise their 5-year-old twin daughters, Ella and Emma, alone. Their curly hair, boundless energy, and endless questions filled his days with joy. Yet the void of Caroline's absence lingered like an unhealed wound. Dating had been a string of disappointments. Women, captivated by his status, uninterested in the messy reality of fatherhood. Tired of superficial connections, Graham devised a plan: disguise himself as an ordinary man, stripped of wealth and title, to see who might see him for who he truly was. On a crisp autumn evening, Graham traded his tailored Armani suits for faded jeans and a plain t-shirt, his sleek Mercedes for a borrowed 2009 Honda Civic with a slightly squeaky door. He decided to bring Ella and Emma along, turning the date into a family outing at Bella's Trattoria, a cozy Italian restaurant with checkered tablecloths, warm lighting, and the comforting aroma of garlic bread. The hostess, a young woman with a sharp bob and a skeptical glance, eyed the wriggling twins and the diaper bag slung over Graham's shoulder. "You brought your kids to a date," she whispered, one eyebrow arched. "It's not really a date," Graham replied, his voice steady despite the nervous thud in his chest, more intense than any high-stakes boardroom negotiation. "Just dinner." Skeptical but professional, she gestured to table 5 by the window, the only one equipped with booster seats. Graham settled the girls, their tiny hands already reaching for the crayons on the table. Emma grabbed the salt shaker, shaking it like a maraca, while Ella hugged her pink stuffed bunny, its ears flopping as she scanned the room with wide, curious eyes. Graham checked his phone. The woman from the dating app had cancelled with a curt message: "Sorry, can't date a broke dad of 2. Good luck." Disappointment stung, sharper than he expected. He adjusted Ella's hairband, his mind racing. Maybe this experiment was a mistake. He was about to gather the girls and leave when the restaurant door swung open. A woman walked in, her golden hair tied back in a loose ponytail, a worn tote bag slung over her shoulder, a dog-eared paperback peeking out. She squinted at her phone, then scanned the room, her gaze landing on Graham's table. With a nervous smile she approached. "Hi, I'm Sadie," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Sorry, I'm late. The bus was slow, and I missed my stop." Graham realized the mix-up instantly. She was meant for another date, another table, likely the man at table 7 checking his watch impatiently. But something in her eyes stopped him from correcting her. They were sincere, with a quiet weariness that mirrored his own, a depth that hinted at a life shaped by struggle and resilience. "No problem," he said softly, gesturing to the empty chair. "We just got here." Sadie glanced at the twins, who stared back with unblinking curiosity. "I didn't realize I'd be dining with such esteemed company," she teased, her smile warm and unforced. Emma squinted, clutching the salt shaker. "Do you like cats?" Sadie chuckled, settling into the chair across from Graham. "More than I like most people, honestly." Ella slid a purple crayon across the table, her bunny tucked under one arm. "Draw one." Without hesitation, Sadie grabbed a napkin and sketched a lopsided kitten with a bow and uneven whiskers. The girls giggled, pointing at the drawing. Utterly enchanted, Graham watched, stunned. Introducing new people to his daughters was usually a minefield of awkwardness, forced smiles, stilted small talk, but this felt effortless, as if Sadie belonged at their table. Dinner arrived in a flurry of Carrara spaghetti with marinara for the girls, fettuccine alfredo for the adults, sauce splattered on the tablecloth, orange juice tipped over when Emma reached for a breadstick, and napkins became casualties in the battle against mess. Sadie didn't flinch. She wiped Emma's chin with a gentle hand and shared a story about slipping face first into a birthday cake at the library where she worked as a librarian. The kids thought it was hilarious, she said, mimicking her own flustered expression. "I was covered in frosting for hours." The twins burst into laughter, their eyes bright with delight. Graham felt a warmth stir in his chest, a feeling he hadn't known since Caroline's passing. Caroline's memory surfaced vividly, her laughter as she painted with the girls on the kitchen floor, her ability to turn chaos into joy. Her death had left Graham guarded, every new connection feeling like a betrayal of her memory. But watching Sadie engaged with his daughters. The guilt softened, replaced by a flicker of peace, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Sadie didn't ask about his job, his income, or his status. Instead, she leaned toward Ella, asking, "What's your favorite animal?" When Ella shyly answered unicorns, Sadie nodded seriously, as if unicorns were a perfectly reasonable choice. She listened intently to Emma's rambling tale of a magic rock she'd found in the park, nodding at just the right moments. When Graham caught her eye, her smile was genuine, not flirtatious or calculated, just present. Mid-meal, the server placed the leather-bound check on the table. With a polite, "Take your time," Graham reached for his back pocket. Then froze he'd left his wallet in his real car to maintain the broke facade. Panic flared, his mind racing for an excuse. Sadie noticed, her gaze softening. Without a word, she pulled out her worn leather wallet, slid out a debit card, and handed it to the server with a quiet smile. "It's fine," she said to Graham. "I've had worse dinner dates." Graham stared, stunned. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," she said gently, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "But I wanted to. You looked like you needed someone to be kind." It wasn't about the money. Graham could buy the entire restaurant chain if he wanted. It was the way she saw him, not as the billionaire CEO, but as a frazzled dad juggling booster seats and juice boxes. As the evening continued, Sadie opened up more. "I grew up in a house where money was tight," she said, her eyes distant. "With memory, we didn't have much, but books were everywhere, stacked on shelves. The floor, even in the bathroom. My mom read to me by candlelight when the power went out. That's why I became a librarian. Books made me feel rich, even when we had nothing." Graham listened, moved by her quiet gratitude. Most women he'd dated pried about his Aspen chalet, his car collection, or his latest business deal. But Sadie cared about who he was, not what he owned. "You must love your job," he said, his voice soft. "I do," she replied, her smile bittersweet. "The kids who come in after school, the ones who linger because home isn't easy, they light up when I remember their names or save a book for them. It's small, but it feels like it matters." Ella leaned her head on Sadie's arm, and Sadie brushed a crumb from her cheek with a tenderness that made Graham's throat tighten. "These girls," Sadie whispered, "are something special. They're my world," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. As the meal wound down, the restaurant grew quieter, the clatter of plates fading. Graham offered to walk Sadie to the bus stop or drive her home. "It's not a fancy car," he said with a wry smile, "but it gets from point A to point B." She hesitated, glancing out the window at the darkening street. "It's okay," she said softly. "I like the walk. It clears my head." He hid his disappointment, nodding. "Of course." She bent down to the girls, kissing Ella's forehead. "Thanks for the cat drawing, artist. Come draw again," Emma called, her voice hopeful. Sadie's smile lingered, warm and uncertain. "Maybe." Driving home, the twins dozed in their car seats, hands smudged with crayon, clutching the napkin art. Graham parked in his sprawling garage, the contrast between the modest Civic and his usual fleet stark. He stared at the drawing a lopsided cat, with the word Sadie plus Ella in crooked letters. It reminded him of Caroline, who used to draw farm animals with the girls on old newspapers, her laughter filling their home. That memory had haunted him, making every new connection feel like a betrayal. But tonight, watching Sadie laugh through the chaos of spilled juice and flying crayons, he felt peace, not pain. Maybe healing wasn't betrayal, it was permission to keep going. 4 days later, Graham couldn't shake Sadie's image, her genuine laugh, her ease with the girls, her quiet act of paying the bill without judgment, her passing comment about working at the library near Pine Street, the one with the red doors, stuck with him. On Saturday morning, he packed the girls into the Civic, telling himself it was just a casual library visit. No expectations, just curiosity and a sliver of hope. The library's red doors were impossible to miss, bold against the brick facade. Inside, the scent of old books and wood polish wrapped around them like a familiar blanket. In a cozy corner, children sat cross-legged around a woman in a soft, grey cardigan, a picture book in her lap. And then the bear said, "Who took my hat?" Sadie's voice rose theatrically, making the kids giggle. Emma gasped, "That's her." Before Graham could stop them, the twins raced forward, squeezing between the other children. Sadie paused mid-sentence, startled, then looked up, her eyes widening as she saw Graham at the entrance, hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders tense. "Hi," he said softly. She closed the book, announcing a quick break. The kids groaned, but, scattered to the beanbags, Sadie stood, brushing her hands on her jeans. "You found me." I remembered the red doors. Ella held up a folded piece of paper. "We made you another drawing." Sadie took it with a soft smile, unfolding a picture of a cat with a heart-shaped tail. "Thank you, sweetie." Her gaze shifted to Graham. "You weren't the man I was supposed to meet that night." "No," he admitted, his voice low. "You were meeting someone else." But I couldn't walk away. For once, someone saw me, not the CEO, not the guy with a ridiculous net worth, just the dad trying to keep it together. Sadie crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "Then, why did you stay?" "Because it felt real," he said honestly. "You listened to my daughters, paid the bill without flinching, laughed. When things got messy, you didn't look at me through a lens of money or power." Her eyes softened, but she held her ground. "What I saw that night was real, the way you looked at them, the way they looked at you. But I need time to figure out what's real when everything else around you feels complicated." He nodded, respecting her caution. "Take all the time you need." Their meetings began small and tentative, like delicate threads weaving together. Graham brought the girls to the library more often, each visit a chance for Sadie to surprise them with a new book or a storytime session. One afternoon, they met at a nearby park, where Sadie read aloud from a children's novel while the girls chased butterflies through the grass. Graham sat on a bench, watching her animated expressions, realizing how her presence made ordinary moments feel significant, steady, not flashy. One Friday evening, a folded piece of paper appeared in Sadie's mailbox, covered in crayon scribbles. The childlike handwriting read, "Dear Miss Sadie, come eat dinner with us. We made drawings and cookies. Love, Ella, Emma, and Daddy too." Sadie pressed the note to her chest, a smile breaking through her hesitation. She knew she couldn't say no. Graham drove them to his mother's old cottage at the edge of town, a modest home with flower pots lining the porch and wind chimes clinking softly in the breeze. "This was my mom's place," he explained as they pulled into the gravel driveway. "I keep it as it was. It's where I go when I don't want to be Mr. Westwood." Inside, the living room was a gallery of crayon masterpieces taped to every wall. Sadie laughed, her eyes sparkling. "You weren't kidding about the drawings." Ella grabbed her hand. "Come, sit by me." Dinner was spaghetti again, by popular demand, the table alive with chatter and mess. Graham wore an apron that said "Kiss the Cook," pretending not to be embarrassed when sauce splattered his shirt. Sadie helped Emma twirl her noodles, sharing another story about a library mishap involving a runaway hamster. The girls' laughter filled the room, and Graham felt his heart settle into a rhythm he hadn't known in years. After dinner, as they played board games, Sadie knelt to tie Ella's shoe, brushing her bangs aside and clipping them with a tiny hairpin. Ella beamed her trust in Sadie. Absolute. Graham watched from the doorway, drying a plate, his heart stilling. "I've never seen them trust someone so fast," he said quietly. Sadie looked up, surprised. "I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I just care." "That's exactly what they need," he replied, his voice thick. As the girls curled up with a picture book, their heads resting on each other, the evening felt whole, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Then, the world intruded. A grainy photo surfaced online, taken through branches outside the Pine Street Library. Sadie holding hands with Ella and Emma, all three smiling. The caption read, "Mystery woman spotted with Westwood twins. Who is she?" Within hours, Sadie's name was trending. Paparazzi swarmed her small apartment, cameras peeking through blinds, microphones thrust at her as she left for work. Headlines speculated, wildly marriage, scandal, secret motives. Her quiet life was torn apart. At the library, her director called her into his office, his expression weary. "There's been pressure," he said, avoiding her eyes. "One of our top donors is threatening to pull funding. They say the media frenzy is too distracting." Sadie's heart sank. "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," he said quietly. "But they care about appearances, not truth." She left with a box of her belongings, books, a mug, a few photos, whispers of co-workers trailing her like shadows. That night, she sat on her couch, the silence heavy. Her phone buzzed with texts from reporters, strangers, and one message. She read repeatedly, "Sadie, please talk to me. I had no idea this would happen." Graham. The next morning, Reporters lined her building, neighbors peeking out windows. Then, a car door slammed. Graham appeared, his tailored coat unbuttoned, hair tousled by the wind. Cameras snapped wildly, but he ignored them, looking straight at Sadie's door. From her window, she watched, hands trembling. He raised his voice just enough to carry. "I can't change the world, Sadie, but I can stand between you and it. Just say the word." Her voice came through the door, small but clear. "You have to protect your daughters. Don't let them get caught in this mess." "They're already in it," he replied, his voice cracking. "They've asked about you every night this week. They miss you, and so do I. I didn't ask for this, neither did we. But this is the most real thing I've had in years." Silence stretched. The cameras clicked. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but I need you to go." He nodded slowly, then turned, walking through the crowd, each step heavy. Sadie slid to the floor, back against the door, tears falling as she clutched the box of her library things. 3 days later, a drawing was taped to her door. "We miss you, Miss Sadie," in purple crayon, with Emma's orange handprint in the corner. Sadie paused each time she passed it, her fingers brushing the paper, her heart aching. She dreamed of their giggles, the warmth of that cottage, the messy dinners. She missed the Mellors' shy smiles, Emma's bold questions, Graham's quiet gaze dotted Graham's sprawling estate. Silence had settled, heavy and hollow. The girls felt Sadie's absence keenly. On the third night, Emma climbed into his lap, eyes glossy. "Is Miss Sadie gone forever?" "No, sweetheart," Graham said, brushing a tear from her cheek. "She just needs time." "Did we do something wrong?" Emma's voice wavered, his chest tightened. "Not at all. She loves you so much." The next morning, the girls sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by crayons, unusually focused. They presented a new drawing, 3 stick figures labeled us, with hearts floating around them, and the words, "We bring our hearts." Graham stared at it, then stood. "We're going to see her." They took the Civic, parking 2 blocks from Sadie's apartment to avoid lingering reporters. At her door, the old drawing still fluttered in the breeze. Graham knocked softly, then stepped back. Ella taped the new drawing below the old one. The girls stood side by side, arms stretched out, ready for a hug they weren't sure they'd receive. Inside, Sadie sat surrounded by books, reorganizing them to keep her mind busy. She froze at the knock, then heard giggles, the rustle of paper, and the unmistakable sound of love waiting. She opened the door slowly. Ella and Emma stood, with arms wide, eyes bright. "Sadie," Ella whispered. Sadie fell to her knees, tears streaming as she pulled them into her arms. "I missed you so much," she choked out. Graham stood back, hands in his pockets. "I didn't come with headlines or promises, just our hearts." "Why?" she asked, standing slowly, the girls still clinging to her. "Because I can live, without fame, without money, but not without you. You were protecting us by leaving," he said gently. "But that's not protection, that's pain." She opened the door wider. "Come in." They stepped inside, and no one let go. Life after that day didn't return to normal. It became something better, quieter, more honest. Graham and Sadie began again, not in secret or with fanfare, but with a determination to build something real. They avoided grand gestures, focusing on small moments, walks in the park, story time at the cottage, grocery runs where Ella insisted on pushing the cart while Emma rode inside. Sadie moved cautiously, her trust shaken by the media storm, but she stayed. Graham respected her pace, never pushing. When he asked, "If you could do anything in the world, what would it be?" she replied, "Start a reading program for kids who don't have books at home. The ones who linger in the library because it's safer than home." He nodded. "Let's build it." They called it Story Nest, a mobile reading program visiting shelters, community centers, and underserved schools. Sadie led, selecting books and training volunteers, while Graham funded it quietly, letting her steer every decision. The program gained traction, and headlines shifted from gossip to its impact stories of children finding joy in books. At home, routines formed. Sadie stayed for dinner more often, then overnight when the girls begged. She read bedtime stories, voicing characters with flair, the girls clinging to her arms. One evening, after a tale of a lost bear finding a new family, Emma yawned and asked, "Can I call you Mama Sadie?" The room stilled. Sadie's eyes filled with tears. She knelt by the bed, clutching Emma's hand. "If that's what you want, Then yes, of course. Ela reached out. Graham sat on the bed's edge, taking Sadie's other hand, his silence saying everything. Later, on the cottage porch, wrapped in a blanket, Sadie whispered, "I never wanted to replace anyone." "You didn't," Graham said. "You became something entirely your own. I guess this just happened." "No," he said, voice thick. "We chose this. Every small moment, we made this." 1 year later, their life was beautifully simple. Sadie returned to the library, not for necessity but love. They spent most evenings at the cottage, its wind chimes a constant melody. On a soft spring afternoon, they held a family picnic in the backyard, the table from that first night rebuilt worn with mismatched chairs. The girls ran barefoot, weaving daisy chains. After dessert, they returned giggling, carrying a tiny box wrapped in napkins. "For you," Emma said, dropping it into Sadie's lap. Inside was a ring of soft rope and colorful beads, uneven and precious. "We made it," Ella said proudly. Graham knelt. "I used to think I'd only be loved for my name, my money. Then you sat at the wrong table, saw past it all, and became the heart of us. Sadie Quinn, will you marry me?" Sadie laughed through tears, slipping on the ring. "We've been a family for a while. You're just catching up." The girls squealed, circling them with hugs. No cameras, no headlines, just sunlight, wind, and love. In quiet moments, they knew. Love arrives softly, at wrong tables, turning worlds right. Graham learned hearts outshined headlines. Sadie, her small world could hold boundless love,